This album is a bit of a mixed bag, designed, in the words of the FT, to show the youth what proper boredom is. But is it really that bad? Heaven and Earth is Yes with added cheese, a kind of an appropriation of Yes, a bit like Roger Dean, colour by numbers. And it cleverly employs a lexicon, so we're fooled into thinking maybe it is classic Yes after all. Words like ascension, visions, consciousness and light, all designed to summon the memory of that Lancastrian harp plucker that we all miss so much. And this album is designed to reach out to the Yes faithful, shrink-wrapped in another fantasy-scape. We get the scat guitar pluckings of Steve Howe and the tasselled warblings of John Davidson. But as Eddie Izzard once said, you should never put a sock inside a toaster. And why I said that, I don't know. I suppose it's just a bad idea. I mean, if you're going to do Yes, do it well. The famous novelist, satirist Jonathan Swift once wrote, "There's nothing more consistent in this world than inconsistency." And this perfectly sums up this band's catalogue, which at times touches upon the truly sublime, yet also plunges the murky depths of self-parody. I mean, if that was a sliding scale, where would you put this album? Interestingly, Nick Porcaro has written that Yes never really recovered from the 80s. If I may quote from his article, "Of all the problems of Heaven and Earth, the biggest offender is one that's played Yes for decades now. Digital recording technology is the worst thing to ever happen to this band. Any trace of grit or warmth in those early string of classics was obliterated around the time of 1983's 90125. And for this album, the producer Roy Thomas Baker was brought in. The man with so many success stories under his belt, including Queen's Night at the Opera. If anyone's going to add a bit of grit and realism to a Yes album, it's got to be him. As soon as I saw his name mentioned, I thought, this is a man who's going to add some thrum and some edge to Yes's ethereal tweetings. Instead, we get this insipid prog pottage. I wonder if this poor show is due to the rushed nature of this album, or whether it's due to Billy Sherwood's mixing, I don't know. Not overlooking the fact the material is just half-baked. And it's a real shame, really, at a time when this band needed to put out something excellent. To assist them in their claim for legitimacy, this album had to be it. And I know many of you will accuse me of being down on the latest incarnation of Yes. It's not true at all. I went to see them last year and I thoroughly enjoyed the show. I thought The Quest was a much better album. I still don't think it scales the giddy heights of classic Yes, quite frankly, but it had some nice moments on it. But this album is a pretty poor show, quite frankly. And the mix doesn't do this album any favours. When we get a Yes album, very much like the Roger Dean artwork, we're expected to be taken on a journey, a certain sonic lushness, if you like. The drumming seems a little bit buried in the mix, and the vocals are singing. If I may quote Nick Porcaro again, he says, "It is slathered in reverb and over-processed to the point of unease, robbing the band's trademark harmonies of their beauty." It's no wonder Steve Howe has described this album as hellish tricky to make. But despite this album being a bit of a dud, I have to say the track Believe Again is most excellent. I absolutely adore that number. Light, uplifting tone and melody, rich atmospheric textures which very much define this band. Ascend is another one. Fairly decent number, majestic and enchanting, lovely guitar and bass at the start. The only saving grace for this album, not that it has many, is I think Steve Howe's guitar work and the wonderful bass work added by Chris Squire. Their performances are the best part of this album. It's just a shame that this is the last album I think Chris would play on. The game is quite nice, really. It has some interesting appreciated guitar lines, but it just drags on without any real progression. Love the guitar intro to this, but overall this track, like this album, is an uninspiring splodge, really. It's a bit like Aha, but not as gritty. And this album flounders about the lyrical input of John Anderson, and it tends to employ certain tropes we would associate with him, but they come across as forced and inauthentic. I mean, take the line from one of the songs on this album, "In a World of Our Own." You get this lyric: "You can whet your appetite anywhere as long as you do your cooking at home." I mean, what the fudge is that, to be honest with you, for on a Yes album? Davison's voice, this band have often employed vocal performers who sound like John Anderson, always have done. I think they drop off a conveyor belt in Pontefract somewhere. But John Davison, I think, seems to thrash about on this album, kind of a faux New Age spiritualism, which seems a little bit, I used the word inauthentic before, but it's a bit like bootleg Yes. This idea of a kind of an awakening or a motif as a tune that Yes have played along with for years. But on this album it does sound rather shrill and jarring. One critic has written that Davison sounds like he's about to burst into tears on half of these songs. I know exactly where he's coming from. It certainly reduced me to tears when I first heard it. We get a kind of almost homage to a Woolies Christmas advert at the very beginning of It Is All We Knew. Then we get that annoying, buoyant synth sound which very much defines Step Beyond. And once again, Squire and Howe have to come riding in on their prog charges to try and rescue some of these numbers with their chunky guitar riffs and heavy bass lines. Subway Waltz has a few interesting changes, but doesn't warrant dragging on for 9 minutes. It sounds like it's trying to be the obligatory prog epic without the element of epicness, if that makes sense. It's not quite tapping into that essence of yesness. The 19th century American novelist Herman Melville said it's better to fail in originality than to succeed in imitation. Unfortunately, this album falls short on both counts. There's no doubt that this band have authored some of the most inspiring and greatest prog rock albums ever. And I'm not down on this incarnation of Yes. I'm actually really looking forward to the new album as it comes out. I hope they go at it just unabashed and look to produce some sort of prog epic again. A whole sidelong suite of music would be fantastic. But I have no idea what they have in mind, but ever the optimist, I'm hoping that they actually build upon the progress they made with The Quest. So there you are, that's my thoughts on Yes, It's Heaven and Earth. I asked the question at the beginning, is it really that bad? In this case, I'd have to say yes. No pun intended. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Do you think I'm doing this album a disservice? Please leave your comments below. Click like, subscribe, check that notification bell, do all that stuff. And if you've still got a moment after that, do check some of the links below this video for ways you can support the sterling work done at Classic Album Review. It's always much appreciated. Become a Patreon, why not? Anyway, I shall leave you, as I always do, with my closing salvo, which is, hope you're well, staying safe, but more importantly that you keep listening.